This week, I'm asking what really matters in SEO in 2025. I'm joined by former senior member of the Google search quality team, Kaspar Szymanski, and we're going to find out how to avoid the noise and find the things that really make an impact for you and your business.
It's a big question. It's not a case where I apply LLMs and my website starts soaring. No, we can apply LLMs to resolve issues on the website in order to make the website better understood. But they are not a silver bullet. The product and the user and the audience, they always come first. Users' time is as precious as anybody else's. So giving the user what they're looking for in the shortest time possible is actually a good business practice. Meeting or preferably exceeding user expectations, and that is as close as it gets to a perfect business strategy. And it's a hard truth. It's a very inconvenient truth. It's great if the traffic is forthcoming, but there is no guarantee for the traffic to be forthcoming tomorrow. The quality of that content has considerably declined, and it happens to be really hard to find actual real quality content because it's being overshadowed with everything else out there, much of which is SEO content.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Search with Candour. I am Jack Chambers-Ward, your host as always, and this is the podcast where I interview the best and brightest across the SEO and digital marketing industry, and we basically have conversations to help you do your job better and understand the industry a little better as well. This week I am joined by the brilliant Kaspar Szymanski, and we're talking all about what matters in SEO. Maybe it might be a hidden gem little piece of data that you have access to that you didn't realize is more important than you thought it was. Or maybe there's a tool you're not using that could really help you out here. Kaspar has some brilliant insights and advice that I think will really help you focus on what matters and filter out a lot of the noise that's going on in the industry at the moment and really get to the stuff that is going to make an impact, that's going to make you get better clicks, get more impressions, get more traffic, and at the end of the day, make more money for you, your clients, or your business. And yeah, it's a brilliant conversation. I really, really enjoyed sitting down with Kaspar. It's the first time we had properly spoken, and it felt like we just kind of clicked straight away. You know, I know I say that a lot on the podcast, right, when we have these kind of conversations. But yeah, Kaspar is somebody I'm definitely going to keep paying attention to and follow when he travels across Europe doing his talks and things like that. I've seen a couple of Kaspar's talks before, and he is brilliant. And yeah, stay tuned for a really fun and insightful conversation with Kaspar after a word from our sponsors.
If you're not already using or you don't know what AlsoAsked is, let me give you 3 reasons you should be using it. Number 1, AlsoAsked gives you the intent blueprint directly from Google to help you make the best possible content. You get live pre-clustered searcher questions that are bang up to date, the majority of which aren't available from big keyword research tools. This is for any country or any language that Google supports, and you can quickly download it and export it in graphical or text format. Number 2, AlsoAsked's timeline feature shows you when a topic's intent has changed. This lets you know when you need to refresh and update your content, and crucially, what has changed, what people are asking right now. Number 3, AlsoAsked's API allows you to integrate with popular tools like Screaming Frog and ChatGPT to automate tasks like content gap discovery. Set it up with Screaming Frog and you can press a button to get a list of questions your content misses on every single URL. You can try AlsoAsked for free right now. Just go and put a search term in the box. Everybody gets 90 searches per month for free. You don't even need an account. If you do want to sign up, you can cancel at any time with a monthly account, or if you do want to commit to an annual account, you'll get an additional 20% off. If you're still unsure, check out some of the brilliant case studies and guides below this video.
My guest this week is a globally renowned SEO consultant and trainer with almost 20 years of experience in digital marketing. He has spoken at conferences around the world. He was a senior member of the Google search quality team. Along with Philly Weiss, he is the co-founder of SearchBrothers.com, a consultancy specializing in recovering websites from Google penalties. He is also an aviator, a marathon runner. He is the guest for this week's show. Welcome to Search with Candour, Kaspar Szymanski.
Thank you for having me. And this has been the best introduction I ever had. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it, mate. Thank you. I like to put a bit of effort into my intros, do a bit of research, and make sure you feel like the superstar coming in to join me on the podcast. So that's always my goal, at least.
It's a humbling experience. Great to be here.
And I know I mentioned to you before we started recording, I have followed you for quite a long time now. I've seen you speak at conferences. I've met Philly a couple of times in Brighton as well, and we've spoken about the awesome work you guys do over at Search Brothers and the brilliant things you've been doing on other podcasts as well and things like that. It's really, really cool to finally sit down, and it feels like a big topic we're going to discuss this week. I feel like we're going to go in a lot of different directions, but I know you have a lot to say about what really matters in SEO and what should we be tracking, what metrics should we be paying attention, what we shouldn't be paying attention to, all that kind of stuff. It's a big topic, Kaspar. I know we're going to, like I said, we're going to get into a lot of this. So I guess what I kind of want to start off with is there is a lot of noise around, right? And I know this is something you've written about and spoken about before. I think it's difficult for a lot of, especially inexperienced SEOs or people looking to work with agencies or freelancers or consultants, to understand how to kind of focus in and find that. What is your kind of technique, and from your 2 decades of experience of filtering out that noise and actually finding out what matters before we get into the details?
It's a big question. I do believe that the noise that you're referring to, this cognitive overflow in terms of all the input that's out there, for a lot of people, that's entirely overwhelming, right? Because if you try to follow all the media news, be that in SEO or otherwise, there's just so much out there. It's impossible to actually follow every bit of information that seems to be newsworthy and at the same time get your actual SEO job done and work on your major platform, major brand, or your portfolio. It can be quite overwhelming. So to answer your question, Jack, since you're asking, how do we deal with it? Well, we tend not to focus on short-lived hypes or generally following what seems to be on the news at that given point in time has no tangible impact on the website or client's websites that you happen to be working on at that very moment. It is happening no matter what. It's kind of like Google updates, right? There used to be a time way back when there would be a handful of Google updates every year. There wouldn't be even so much as admitted by Google. And that's changed. And I think this is a good development. Google tends to highlight major incidents and confirm when these are kind of like fully rolled out. So we would have, how many is that? 20, 30 confirmed Google updates every year? That's just peak of the iceberg, right? There would be actually a handful of smaller, less significant updates happening every day. Trying to follow these, either those confirmed incidents or general, the entire body, that's like a full-time job. That's something a journalist can attempt to be doing. But for a full-time SEO, for a consultant or an in-house SEO, that's just a daunting task. And these will be happening no matter what. So how about focusing on what counts? And what counts is, of course, signal input. That's something where we can make a difference, something that we can change, we can improve. Google updates will happen no matter what. So how about ignoring them for the time being?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, like you said, focus on the Google core update stuff. And I know there's been a few statements recently from Google saying they're kind of shifting away from, as you said, the handful every year of the big core update stuff. It's going to be more of a constantly rolling, like you said, smaller iterative kind of updates throughout the years. So it's not necessarily going to be a moment of, oh, this happens in March and now my client site has been affected and all that kind of stuff. There's, as the ranking factors and the algorithms and the systems get more and more complex, especially integrating things like LLMs and things like that, it's going to be a nature of you can't just update a single system without affecting so many other things, right? I think you get into that process of, like you said, oh, we worried about one thing. Oh, it was our links that were affected. It was our content that was affected, whatever it was. But actually looking at the bigger picture. And it's something we always say to our clients here is like, if you're doing good work, you probably don't need to worry about the Google updates. Like I think a lot of people freak out about, oh, my client might be affected by this. It's like, well, what were you doing wrong to get affected by that, right? If you're doing good work, then we as a general rule don't really like track that or care about it. And there have been a couple of times where we've seen a little bit of change here and there, and you get caught in something. But for the most part, certainly in my career and previously before Candour, you kind of just carry on doing what you're doing. And like you said, you kind of focus on what matters, what signals you care about, what your clients care about, the metrics that you should be tracking, and not get easily distracted. Because like you said, we are 24/7, 365 online news all the time. And exactly, you said they're like it's a full-time job to even keep track of that. I feel like it's part of my job now because we're doing newsletters and podcasts and all that kind of stuff. It's a big part of my job. But I also feel like I couldn't then also do a full-time agency role in SEO here as well. So it's kind of, I think it's easy to get distracted and kind of get stuck in, oh, that's a shiny new thing. Let me try that out, right? And you get into that process very easily.
So, I think you touched on a very kind of important point that is rarely even really put into focus, which is, what's the approach? Is it a proactive or rather reactive approach? If we happen to be focusing on updates, just to talk about that for a moment still, that's completely reactive. There is an update happening, and we find ourselves in a situation where we're kind of rushing to stem the tide, to undo whatever damage was perceived, to kind of turn the trajectory around. And I like what you've been talking about just a moment ago much more, which is the proactive approach. Let's make sure search engines, of course, including Google, but also including Bing, that both major search engines understand search engine signals correctly, that they are coherent, that all of the signals point in the same direction. And that can be broken down into specific steps. To begin with, the most important thing, don't have the no index combined with a canonical, because that's going to get you in trouble. But there's, of course, many, many other things. Talking key metrics, right? So what's a metric one should be looking at? Crawled, not indexed, probably a metric one should be looking at. Crawl stats to begin with, probably a metric that one should be looking at as well. Which opens up a boatload of different areas of SEO, which, if they are actually shed light on, they bear so much potential for growth. And one of the topics I tend to talk about way too much about is server logs, right? Because for large websites, server logs open up the possibility of actually managing the crawl budget. It matters tremendously for websites that are considerably large, 50 million landing pages, 100 million landing pages. It matters tremendously whether they need a month to be recrawled or whether they need a year to be recrawled, especially if they happen to be in a short-lived niche. Think classifieds, think retail, where products need to be up to date and available, right? So there is many, many more bigger fish to be fried rather than focusing on this short-lived new shiny thing, as you mentioned it. And that applies in the same way, I believe, to new tools that are out there. LLMs is a perfect example.
Definitely.
just before starting the recording, we talked about how useful they are, and they most definitely are. The LLMs still remain a tool, meaning it's not a case where I apply LLMs and my website starts soaring. No, we can apply LLMs to resolve issues on the website in order to make the website better understood. But they are not a silver bullet. They are not an all-in-one solution, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. I think you mentioned signal inputs earlier as well. I think that is so true for LLMs. It's the classic thing that every programmer, every software developer has talked about for decades at this point. Garbage in, garbage out, right? If you put in bad stuff into your LLM, if you don't know what you're talking about, if you're trying to basically fake being an expert in a topic or trying to make something up or just wing it and try and get clicks for the sake of getting clicks, you're gonna get bad results, because sure, you might fool a few people, you might get a handful of clicks here and there, but as we said, like, this is the long run, this is the end goal, the long-term strategy of it all. That's not how you should go about it, because it's not going to work. You're going to get that garbage out. And I love that you mentioned server logs. I know that is a passion of yours and a topic that so many people kind of, I don't know, necessarily take for granted, maybe even don't know is there. And I saw a brilliant talk from Stephen Van Vessen from Conductor a few years ago at Brighton SEO. And he talked about server logs. And he got heckled. It was the first time I'd ever seen anyone heckled at Brighton SEO. He said, has anyone easily accessed server logs before? Or have you found it really difficult? Show of hands if you find it really difficult to speak to your developers or your webmasters or your hosting to get your server logs. Everybody's hand goes up, right? And one guy shouts out, It's really easy for me. Like, okay, good for you. Congratulations. Like 99% of everyone else here, and there's like 300-400 people in this room.
Yeah.
It can be quite an intimidating thing. And I think a lot of people don't even look at the crawl stats report in Search Console, right? That's even a touch point that a lot of people don't even have with, like you said, understanding how search engines are seeing our site, crawling our site, understanding how things connect together. For you, where is the kind of the gold mine when it comes to digging into those server logs? What are the kind of things we should be looking for? Because it can be a pretty intimidating process. Like you said, if you're dealing with millions of pages, it's going to be a lot of it's going to be a lot of text and a big file to deal with. What's the kind of things we should be looking when we're thinking about the gold that we could find in server logs?
It is. We're talking most definitely, in many cases, terabyte, but often petabyte size, considerable amounts of data. There is a cost attached to that, not the saving and preserving. That's almost free of charge. I mean, hard drive costs nothing, right? The processing cost, that's actually considerable cost. Of course, to begin with, those server logs need to be recorded. And I think for our audience, it's important to know that if you're not recording your server logs today, they're gone forever. There is no possibility of server logs.
You can't get them in the future if they weren't in the past.
No. So if you ever want to embrace the approach that we two are discussing right now, you have to start recording your server logs to begin with. And what happens an awful lot of times, and I also want to mention that because it's important too. Well, what happens an awful lot of times is what we see with business partners. They get into the business, right? So they start collecting and recording their server logs. However, there is a person on the team, because SEO, that's a team sport. There is a lot of people on the team, and there will be somebody on the team who will say, let's make it really cost effective. Let's overwrite the server logs every other month. So they end up with like 30 or 60 days of server log data, which is often just not substantial enough. Ideally, 6 months, 12 months. In the perfect world, saving and preserving server logs in perpetuity, that's what you want to have. Not just for SEO reasons, which we want to dwell upon, but also one day you might want to sell your business. Now, the day that you're considering an exit, you have a very different situation in terms of negotiating the exit price if you happen to have that data at hand, which is your own proprietary data that shows the business's potential and the business's success in the past. So saving and preserving server logs is a very sane, very reasonable business advice in general. Now, in terms of SEO, you want to know primarily one thing. And the way I like to describe this to potential partners is, imagine three circles. There is the one circle that represents your sitemap. There is another circle, and that represents the volume of landing pages one would like to be crawled and indexed. And these two should be overlapping. They rarely do, but let's assume for a moment they're somehow overlapping. Now, how much these are being embraced, one or the other or both, by Google, only server logs can tell us. And if there is a high level of overlap, that means Google likes to regularly crawl those landing pages that generate revenue, or cash cow landing pages if you want. Most of the time, especially if you're very at the beginning of a crawl stat analysis, when you are very at the beginning of a crawl management optimization situation, that overlap is minimum or non-existent. Google doesn't necessarily focus on those landing pages that we care for. That can be improved. If there is no better example, if we are a business that happens to be in the travel industry, we probably don't care for the blog to be crawled that frequently as for the listing pages. We want to make sure that the listing pages are crawled regularly, because that's the up-to-date offers that can be purchased by users and clients, rather than the nice blog landing pages that tell us about your trip to Bali. There is nothing to be sold over there. So only with crawl stats at hand, or with server log stats at hand, we can actually tell with any level of certainty. There is, of course, other things as well. It ties neatly into technical issues. Are our server responses accurate? Are we responding with 200 OK for sub 404 pages where there is no actual content? That's by the way, a killer. That's a ranking killer. If that's happening on a large scale, as you very well know, right? If we happen to have soft 404s, that's very, very bad. Or, we're talking 5xx responses because the servers can't handle the load. All of the above, that can only be investigated if we happen to have server logs at hand. Hence, a great opportunity for optimization, which is unfortunately not being utilized, I want to say, in 9 out of 10 cases, even in the most competitive environments.
Yeah, I think I love the example you used there of using it as a business case, not just an SEO case, right? And I think there's so much we lean into when it comes, especially to the technical SEO side of things, when you're thinking about crawling and indexing and the state of your site and the discoverability of your content. Mark Williams Cook, my co-host, my SEO director here at Candour, used an example a couple of weeks ago of like, technical SEO is the amplifier for everything on your website, right? It's not its own kind of be all end all. It's not a one size fits all for every site. We use the example earlier of 50 million pages or 100 million pages. You can also have local businesses or, one person bands that are 5-10 pages. Maybe you don't need to worry so much about your server logs if you have 5 pages, but I think there's a value there, especially as now, and we're thinking we've mentioned LLMs a couple of times. It's the inevitable topic that will always come up in 2025, whether we like it or not, unfortunately. But I know a lot of people are thinking about how to track how much traffic you receive from LLMs, right? We're seeing a few people. I know Dana DiTomaso from Kickpoint Playbook has come up with a few reports and custom reports in GA4 to track some ChatGPT search traffic and things like that. It's still not great. Attribution models aren't still picking up this stuff properly. And I know there's been a few studies and the kind of percentages people are seeing. Big sites are saying, the big, as you were saying earlier, Kaspar, like the news sites that need this kind of stuff that get this big enough data to actually do a significant statistical analysis. That's fine. But for us with smaller sites working with, national, international clients, whatever it is, I think there's a lot of value in understanding what things are crawling your site, right? It can be as simple as what percentage of your crawls over the last 12 months, 6 months, whatever it is, came from Google versus Bing versus Yandex versus the LLMs that we're seeing. You can also use that to filter out all of the spam stuff as well, right? I know that's one of the things, like I said, Stephen's talking in Brighton SEO, and I know you've spoken about before, is getting rid of all of that rubbish and actually, like we said, getting rid of the noise and finding the stuff that matters. You can then find out how often are we being seen by this stuff? How often are particular bots coming around and finding our content? Is there any discoverability issues in the new content compared to the older content that's been indexed for years and is well established? Is it worth updating an old piece rather than creating a new piece? Oh, you can actually get some, like you said, meaningful statistics about this kind of stuff. And there was a conversation I had with a client, I want to say 3 years ago now. It was when I joined Candour, because I onboarded about the same time as the client did, and we were having this conversation. They would publish content and it would take 3 months roughly to get indexed. They're mostly e-commerce and we're just kind of starting down the informational side of things. And through us working together and understanding and having a look at the technical side of things, also the publishing frequency and all this kind of stuff, they now get indexed within a couple of days typically. And I know there's been a lot of conversation with potentially the upcoming battle for a lot of us in SEO is not necessarily on the SERPs, but it's getting on the SERPs in the first place. That nature of, can Google keep indexing all of this stuff all of the time? There's obviously been the recent push confirming JavaScript rendering for all crawlers, so there's the expense behind it there as well. I think we're seeing more competition to get indexed, let alone rank in the first place, right? And this is exactly where you can use data like server logs to better understand how things are seeing your website and finding your content, right?
I think it's an interesting topic you touched on. Rather than competing on a ranking level, there is a competition in terms of how do we get indexed to begin with. Now, we're obviously in a kind of a little bit of a privileged situation, if you want, because of the personal networks. And obviously we keep touch with our former peers, but it's not so much as proprietary or any kind of secret information that Google has been trying to cut costs across board. And I'm not referring to any reduction in staff. I'm referring to the technical aspect of cost cutting. This is, by the way, both part of the 2023-2024 official business goals, part of the top 10, to make sure that overall costs are being kept in more efficient, I believe is the actual terminology. What does it mean for us? It means that while Google has been for many, many years saying, oh, our index is the largest, we crawl everything, we just go out there and gobble up everything, no matter what, no matter quality, that seems to have changed. We see that in particular when we look from a user perspective. One doesn't have to be a fellow professional. If you look at image search results. Now, previously, if you look for anything at all, really, if you were to look for a red dot, there would be millions and millions images, roughly the same, right? I mean, how much variety can there be in an image showing a red dot? Now, there would be a handful of results, and that applies across board. Google is trying to reduce that cost because it doesn't seem to be adding to the quality. In a nutshell, how many results on a given query do we require in order to serve the audience, to serve our users? And that obviously translates to how frequently websites are being crawled. This is one more reason to make sure to put our best foot forward. And I always like to refer to competitive environments. Obviously, this is influenced because we tend to be engaged in this kind of project where competition is really fierce. So what do we do in order to get there? Of course, brand is a major factor, and not because brand is an SEO factor. It's not. Brand is a factor for CTR because users know a brand and they click on the brand they are familiar with. It's, again, not a silver bullet because we still have to live up to user expectation. So if we already happen to have that brand, if we already have that CTR, we have to make sure users are still happy enough on the landing page. And how do we get there? We make the website really, really, really fast, preferably slightly faster than the competitors, which also goes really rather well with having the website crawled frequently, right? If the server is really rather responsive. SEO is much, much more than following the updates that we've been talking about or applying the latest tool. It is about making sure that the signals are as optimized as possible, and it never stops, right? It's not a project and it's concluded, and we can lean back and enjoy the fruits of our labor. Yes, that's possible for a brief moment, but it's a living and breathing organism. The website will change. There will be updates conducted one way or the other. The infrastructure will change. The architecture will change. At some point, there will be a migration happening, which is a whole different can of worms when it happens. Probably another topic for another occasion for us to dwell on, because it's very exciting and also something that we can talk about in depth. There is, of course, the competition that and our competitors changing and improving sites, new competitors joining the industry, Google changing their policies all the time, sometimes with a lot of fanfare and sometimes really, really quietly. And for that reason, SEO is something that has to be done periodically. I'm not saying every day. We happen to have business partners who are really rather obsessive about some factors. Backlinks is a very prominent example here. We would have conversation with business partners who have a weekly or a monthly or quarterly cycle reviewing their backlinks. And even if that backlink profile is particularly challenging from a Google perspective, I keep saying, please don't allocate resources towards that. There is bigger fish to fry. Make that part of an annual audit. Make sure it's included, as other things should be included. Server logs analysis should be also included. Make that a package. Run that every 12 months. If you really want to be very, very thorough about it, maybe every 6 months, but not more frequently than that. And otherwise, focus on the product. Focus on what makes that website special, because it is possible to outrank the competition with a really rather poorly optimized website with an amazing product, rather than having a fantastically optimized website with a poor product that nobody cares for. The product and the user and the audience, they always come first.
100%. I think, like we said there, it's the technical foundation that lets people navigate and lets crawlers navigate your site, right? But if you're spot on, if you have crap products and bad services, you're not going to get people interested. And in the long term, as you mentioned, brand there as well, you're not going to get customers invested in you long term. This is something I talked about with Morty from Wix a few weeks ago. There's been this whole journey where it seems to be the keyword these days is, brand in SEO, SEO branding, all this kind of stuff. And it seems to be, we were talking a lot about sort of like authenticity in your content and stuff last year. Now we're talking about brand this year, and it's the new trend, shiny, cool thing. And exactly you said, it's not a ranking factor, but it can be a factor in people returning to your site. And again, that same client I mentioned earlier, we've seen an increase in direct traffic recently. And they were like, okay, interestingly, is that good? Is that bad? How do we attribute that? What does that mean? And I was like, well, could be returning customers. It could be an attribution issue in GA4. It could be lots of things. But on the positive side, your revenue is going up and your direct traffic is going up from that direct traffic. So, hello, that's returning customers. That's investment in the brand. That is people perhaps landing on the page through a paid ad or an organic result, but coming back by typing your domain straight into their search bar or going to their bookmarks or whatever it is. There's a huge untapped kind of side of things, and like you said, the long-term bigger picture side of things. I think we always kind of nestle down into, I'll just filter by organic search and only worry about that bit, and not actually looking at a multi-channel analysis. Again, maybe not every week or every day or every month or whatever, but at least a regular review of that I've found really useful to have those kind of conversations with clients and say, actually, there's value in this direct traffic as well. Let's not neglect that. Let's not say we can just ignore that in reporting or whatever. There is value in that from the brand we're building with their paid partners, with us as their SEO agency. I think that's a thing a lot of people kind of take for granted or don't even realize should be discussed, if that makes sense.
I feel like this is a meeting of minds because I rarely have anyone mention organic direct traffic when we have this kind of conversations.
And I saw you react.
Like, yes. And this is the safety net, isn't it? I mean, there is, of course, Google traffic, and a lot of businesses will take it for granted, but it's not. And it's a hard truth. It's a very inconvenient truth. It's great if the traffic is forthcoming, but there is no guarantee for the traffic to be forthcoming tomorrow. Even if you do everything right, you do everything by the book, Google does make mistakes. Google algorithms are very far from being perfect. This is the reason why they're constantly evolved. They're supposed to be improved. They tend to work on a giant scale, but at times, the website that used to be really rather visible yesterday and for the 10 years before that loses that visibility. And there can be very good reasons, right? There can be a mishap. The classic being the staging server has been uploaded to the productive system, including the no index across board for the entire website. That's a classic, right? So from yesterday till today, the entire website is out of the index and we're really in trouble. That can happen, and there can be a multitude of reasons. There can be legacy issues, including backlinks, that lead to a manual spam action, which can take really for a long time to be resolved. It all can be resolved. It likely will be resolved if you find the right partner to kind of give you some advice in this regard. But it is possible for the traffic to be gone from day one to the other day, day two. So what do you do? Because you're a business, right? You have fixed costs, you have staff on the payroll, you have merchandise to be sold, and that traffic is not forthcoming. That's the moment where brand is potentially everything. There will be two sources for traffic in this regard. There will be the branded traffic, the kind of clients and users that are familiar with the brand. They don't need Google or Bing, and I'm saying intentionally Google or Bing. To look for that particular landing page. Now they're familiar with the website. Anybody can kind of imagine that happening for themselves. If they can't find their favorite website where they do their online purchases, we'll just type in traffic. And if, of course, the other chance is Bing. Bing's market share isn't huge, let's face it. For the vast majority of markets, it isn't huge. Certainly not in the US, certainly not in the UK, not in Germany either. Well, you know what? It's still traffic that's forthcoming. Now, I'm a big fan of any traffic that's forthcoming, that's potentially converting, if it's relevant. So let's embrace it. And on that same note, let's embrace Bing Webmaster tools. That's the other source where we get an insight, a glimpse into how algorithms read and understand our website signals. It's not comprehensive like Google's. It's a sample, but it's free data. If it's free, it doesn't cost us anything. It allows for insights. It's fantastic. At the very least, it allows to corroborate findings that we either find in Google Search Console, or maybe using a third-party page tool. There's a handful of really great tools out there that can be utilized for the same purpose. So let's tap into all that data that's available there and make sure that it's as comprehensive as possible, as streamlined, and pointing Google and Bing, of course, towards the same landing pages, the ones that we care for in particular.
100%. Yeah, I think, again, the meeting of minds here, Kaspar, absolutely, where Bing is often neglected, right? You see it as I think the latest stat is just under 4% market share at the moment on desktop and mobile, give or take. So who cares, right? That's such a small percentage. But if you're dealing with a big site, and I had, again, example from a client here, where one click can mean the difference between a sale and not a sale. So even if it's, say you're getting, I don't know, 1 million clicks from Google and only a couple of thousand or a few hundred from Bing in perspective, sure, but a few hundred clicks could turn into a sale. And the client I mentioned here, each project is tens of thousands of pounds. It's big industrial kind of relationships with architects and big franchises and national companies and all that kind of stuff. So one sale could mean tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds just from a single click from a single customer. And as you said, if you're throwing those clicks away or not keeping track of them or not being aware of where things are coming from onto your site from Bing and from other search engines as well, then you might just miss out on that particular click that could be the difference maker between getting that sale and not getting that sale. I know there was a common, I don't know if it's necessarily a misconception now, but a common kind of thing was a lot of the B2B stuff, and if you're working with a company that deals in B2B sales, think about how many people have Bing and Edge just automatically installed on their work computers, and they have no control over that. They have their IT department, and you cannot change browsers. You can't install new apps. I know my wife has worked in hospital trusts and for government departments and stuff like that. You have no control over what you can install or change on your laptop or computer. She often brings me in for IT support, and I'm like, I can't do anything. I would love to help. I can fix this. I know how to fix this problem, but I don't have admin access, so I can't do it. And I think there was a common thing of like, the B2B people at work who are searching for business partners and stuff like that on their work machines are going to use Bing. Like, yeah, okay, fair enough. Maybe. But also people search on their phones all the time. We're now, as we say, people have conversations with ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever it is. There's so many different ways. And again, coming back around to server logs and understanding where that traffic is coming from, understanding how Bing Webmaster Tools works, comparing it to Search Console, because it is different enough. I think this surprise was having a conversation with Chris Green a couple of years ago, and he was really advocating, like, it does some really cool things. It almost has like a mini tech audit in certain ways, and some brilliant features that, like you said, you get for free. How often do you just get free data and free information about your website, as we said, without worrying about storage and thinking about access and contacting the hosting company, all this kind of stuff? You just need to click a few buttons and set yourself up on Webmaster Tools, and you get so much cool, interesting stuff that is sometimes parallel to Search Console, but sometimes a bit more expansive or going in a different direction. I think it's a hugely underrated resource for so many people to kind of just neglect in many ways.
Absolutely. And there is also other alternatives, and it really does come down to what's your target audience, like what's the language. And many among our audience would be either operating globally, or they would be focusing on English or maybe German-speaking clients. But there would be, of course, also markets that are maybe smaller in size, but still not to be neglected. I believe the Czech market is quite an exciting one. Seznam being one of the major players there. There is a comparable tool suite that also allows insights there, and there is a handful of other really rather established search engines that have their very own. The setup is not always as straightforward, especially in languages that you really kind of have a hard time understanding, or where verification requires a national phone. It's not always very straightforward. But if that's your client websites, if that's your client market, absolutely, completely worth the effort. Down the line, however, I think this is also important to say. You kind of mentioned that, but I want to develop that idea a little bit further. Every website is different. Now, the website with 100 million landing pages has, of course, different priorities in comparison to a website that is a small mom and pop shop that really wants to be found for their clients that are nearby. That's a completely different situation. At times, I do happen to be at conferences, which again is a fantastic privilege and a great opportunity not just to share, but to learn from another. And I would be approached by young entrepreneurs who say, we have a very limited budget. Essentially, we don't have a budget. We have a great idea.
That's what that means, really, isn't it? We don't have
that's
the translation.
Absolutely fair. That's as limited as it gets. So they would say they have a rather really limited budget. They have a great idea. What would you like us to focus on in terms of SEO? And my advice in these cases where there is really not so much as manpower for doing that, or technical acumen. Well, maybe there is technical acumen, but there is really much more important things to be done. I always keep saying, don't do nothing about SEO. Forget about SEO, because it doesn't matter. You're not a brand yet. You're about to build a brand, of course, but you don't have a brand quite yet. You're about to build a product which has the potential to really revolutionize the market. There is a unique selling proposition. Focus on that. If you happen to have a small budget, you may go ahead and invest in some SEO, but it could be actually better spent really on marketing efforts or brand building efforts. Because let's face it, SEO nowadays, especially for larger websites, it's very data driven. And data comes at a price. It is not hugely expensive, but if there is no budget to begin with, what do you want to do with the data? Even if you record it, there is not so much as an opportunity to exploit it if it's being recorded. Yes, you may go ahead and record it if it's already set up in place. But the product and the service, they always come first, rather than relying maybe on some very cost-effective SEO methods. One is always surprised, and I'm curious about your perspective on that, because I happen to run lately quite frequently into SEO optimization kind of techniques that remind me a lot of 2006 and 2007, as in purchasing boatloads of really low quality volume of backlinks overnight, and the backlink profile would just go up and to the right, really exploding without so much as a justification. They're all passing PageRank, clearly Google Webmaster Guideline violation. At times this is actually working. It does, of course, come with a risk and with a legacy that one has to drag on and deal with at some point later down the line. So I'm curious to know, is this something you're seeing as well lately?
Definitely, yeah. I think we had a conversation here at Candour when we have been to a couple of conferences around, and we not necessarily suddenly, but it felt like it kind of snuck up on us, where there are a lot of, exactly as you mentioned, these kind of like backlink marketplaces, for want of a better phrase. And I think there are totally legitimate businesses there to connect you with, appropriate journalists and appropriate publishers and all that kind of stuff. There is a genuine business case for that. I'm not saying all of these link marketplaces are, dodgy or black hat or whatever we want to use the term. But I think you're totally right. You see a lot of that kind of accelerated growth, like artificially accelerated growth in a way. Like I'm sure you can speak much more on this from your search quality team days, but like suddenly this site that's been live for 3 months has 100,000 backlinks from all of these different sites. Like that seems quite unlikely. That seems like And I know we use the term sort of like natural link profile versus unnatural link profile. And again, I'm sure you can speak much more on this, Kaspar, than I can, but I can definitely spot that in competitors. I again had an example with a client a couple of years ago where one competitor just exploded out of nowhere. We were like, where is this tiny little team come from? And they're competing with big national like e-commerce sites, which is what our client was at the time. And like, this seems like 3 people in their bedrooms running this e-commerce site. And it's like, oh, it's all drop shipping and bought backlinks and stuff. It is just, we'll make, a few £1,000 over a few months, make the money, sell the site, off we go, move on to the next project, right? It's the short-term gain thing you were mentioning earlier. But I think you're right. If you want to be invested in the long run, you want to be competitive and building your brand and become one of these household names we talk about so often when we talk about brand. I know every SEO always talks about Nike and running shoes for whatever reason. I know you're a runner, Kaspar. Maybe that's why it's your influence on the industry. But yeah, I think there's definitely that. The classic, it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? And I know people hate hearing that, and it's a thing that's been said so many times. You can see quick growth. I think you can create a great product and really get caught up on things, but exactly as you were saying there, maybe SEO isn't the thing you want to be doing in the first spot. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and they were like, I'd love for you to help me out with my SEO stuff. I'm like, I don't really do SEO freelance stuff. I'm too busy with the agency side of things. Also, have you tried like Instagram ads? That seems way more appropriate for your business. And he was like, oh yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. I was like, yeah, try pay. If you have a budget for something and you can invest it, and it's in this case, it was a very visual product that, for want of a better phrase, is Instagram friendly. Like I without giving away all the details, it was like, yeah, it's a visual thing that I think people will really resonate with. He's also a photographer by trade, so I was like, take really nice photos of this thing, get them on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, whatever it is. I think in the short term, start with paid ads. And he was shocked. I was like, I don't work in PPC, yet I always recommend him to do PPC stuff. He was like, why? I thought you were going to say like, yeah, sure, I'll help you out with SEO. Like, no, I think that's not right for your brand at the moment. That's why you're in the really early stages of it's literally you and your wife in your spare room with a pile of boxes. Like, maybe just start with something simple and see if you can get some traction on social media rather than investing, as you were saying there, Kaspar, like, all these different technical processes and working with an agency or buying links or whatever it is. There are so many other options to get you on the ground running and walk before you can run kind of thing, right? To keep the running analogy going. There's definitely that element of, if you see something explode in the SERPs or suddenly show up in organic search, I'm always suspicious. I'm a suspicious person in general. Like, I'm a cynical person in general, skeptical person in general. Like, that looks a bit weird. And as soon as, you put it through a particular tool or you have a look in it, any sort of data, like, that does sound, like you said, you get the nothing. Oh, sudden explosion in the graph. Like, that's very suspicious.
I know what you mean. It does happen legitimately, if you want, every now and then, but this is a rare thing whenever there's that honeymoon period. But it has to be, excuse me, it has to be a brand new website, brand new domain, right? So whenever Google encounters a brand new domain, which is kind of rare, it's rare to find a domain that doesn't have a past and it's still a great domain rather than something really random. So if they happen to find that website that hasn't been experienced before, it's crawled for the very first time, it does tends to rank really rather well without so much as any kind of decent data behind it. I'm not even talking backlinks, but really any decent data. Simply put, Google is trying to figure out, does it even live up to user expectations? That's something they can measure, right? Is there a CTR? What's the user behavior subsequently? Are they going back to the SERP page looking for something else? Are they refining the query, or are they actually tending to indicate with their behavior they're happy enough? That can happen, but that's the thing that lasts for a couple of weeks at best, and at which point it kind of goes down again because, well, those brand new businesses don't tend to have that much of a positive signals, unless they do, of course, and unless they have fantastic user signals and can compete and have the merchandise or have the service that is highly in demand. That's absolutely possible, but it's a rare case. I also want to touch on one point that you said, because recommending to your friend to opt in for PPC rather than organic search of, and visibility, I think this is the way to go about it, especially, as you said, at an early stage of the company's development, of the company's existence. Ultimately, these two are, of course, not exclusive. So,
Absolutely, yeah.
We would have those conversations where clients or business partners ask, well, where should we focus, one or the other? Like, well, if you can, if the budget is there, why not embracing both? Because that creates real SERP real estate, expands on the SERP real estate. Ultimately, the objective for everybody, for every business, to have as much as possible.
Yeah, I think there's that, not necessarily a common misconception, but the kind of phrase that you hear a lot is like, oh, now that you're ranking for this particular keyword or search query, you can now stop investing in PPC because you've already got the number one ranking, so you don't need to worry about paid clicks, right? It's like, I don't know, you're getting a lot of clicks through your paid ads, and they're also served above that top result. So, and different use cases. I know Mark and I have used examples of our friends and family not even realizing ads are ads on Google, and or if they do, they don't care. Who cares? I don't. If it's giving me the thing that I want, I don't care if they've paid for it or not, right? If it's gonna give me the product or the service or whatever it is I'm searching for, I will click on the easiest link to me that as a user,
Right.
with the least amount of scrolling and the least amount of clicks. I don't care if it's paid for at the top and has a particular CTR and blah, blah, blah. People who don't work in SEO or PPC or marketing or whatever don't really care about most of that stuff. Like using that kind of thing where you so focus on like you said, the real estate side of things. And especially when we're talking about AI overviews and LLMs and all this side of the LLM search side of things, I think real estate is more important than ever before. And it's always been important, for the record. There's that real element of, if you can completely own a particular category, particular brand, particular product, particular SERP, whatever it is, and you have, like you said, if you have the budget and resources to do it, absolutely do that. Because I have seen brands where it's almost an inescapable thing with like, oh, there's a knowledge panel. There's also I adjusted it slightly. Now there's a map pack that also features them and the paid ads and the organic results. Like, well, they must be doing something, right? Because they're all over the place.
It happens. And these tend to be, at the same time, very trusted brands. Trusted in a way that the service is not just living up to expectation, but it's also service that puts the client first. Now, for myself, and without so much as advertising for anybody in particular, for me, and I think we are, even though as an industry, we are, of course, rather more aware of things happening as in comparison to an average user. But still, all of us are users. And we tend usually to go, as you just said, to the source that promises the results that we're looking for, be that a product, a service, a piece of information, where we have to click least, where we have to scroll least, and where we know we can trust them, because if it's a product and we get it shipped in a short period of time, but we can also return it at any given point in time if it doesn't live up to expectation, we know this is time well spent. Time, and us in the industry, we probably have to put that also front and center. Users' time is as precious as anybody else's. So giving the user what they're looking for in the shortest time possible is actually a good business practice. And this also is, of course, something that trickles down to how the website is built, how the content is built, how the content is phrased. Something we didn't talk really about that much today. Maybe something we can still, use the last couple of minutes to talk about, or we park that for another instance, for another episode. Making sure that the user gets what they came for is basically one way of managing, meeting, or preferably exceeding user expectations. And that is as close as it gets to a perfect business strategy. I always find those businesses that try to achieve that kind of goal to be most successful, especially in the online vertical. Because we have to keep in mind, the competitor is just one click away, right? So it's not a case where the user has to go, oh my God, I have to go through the entire process again. No, I'm going to click back and I'm going to click on the other result. And that's pretty much it. And content is a whole different situation. One thing that I believe may be interesting for our audience is when talking about signals that matter quite a lot nowadays. Technical signals are the founding stone, are really the foundation. They facilitate everything. But we need to have the content, so we need to have the product, and we also need to make sure that both search engines and users understand the product is available. Now, if we use terminology as unavailable or sold out, talking again a little bit about for landing pages, that's probably sub-ideal. It is also something, and that's what a lot of website operators are unaware of, that's something that kills your user signals, right? Because if you happen to have those landing pages in place and users end up on these landing pages, what they're going to do? They're going to go back. They're going to look for another result. They're going to refine the query. And by doing so, they would be telling Google, well, that landing page did not live up to expectation. And individually, that's of no significance. That's of no consequence whatsoever. But if it keeps happening, and you happen to be in the travel industry, or you happen to be in the retail industry, or in affiliate businesses, all of which are very competitive, that's very bad, because Google algorithms will naturally assume, okay, this is not a great result for users. That website's rankings will inevitably go down. So on-page content, on-page phrasing, all of which are very, very important. Which brings me to my ultimate point: holistic SEO approach. I think SEO, if it's done right, it has to include the technical component, that's for sure. It's still important to look at off-page signals, including backlinks. But content and the technical setup and the infrastructure behind it, that's front and center. That's why SEO has to be done in a holistic way, including all and the most recent data. Of course, including Google Search Console, preferably including server logs, most definitely including Bing Webmaster Tools, just because it's free of charge.
Yeah, definitely. I think the holistic approach to SEO has definitely been a theme of almost every conversation on this podcast. Thankfully, I seem to be getting the right kind of people as guests, which is always a nice thing. Where it feels like we get that. I mentioned the multi-channel approach as well, right? Thinking about that alignment across channels. Something I spoke to Anu Adegbola about a couple of weeks ago. Thinking about how PPC and SEO relate to each other, and if somebody clicks on your paid result and your organic result, do they go to different landing pages? Why would they go to different landing pages? Do they have different content? Are you using completely different phrases or titles or all this kind of stuff to attract people to your paid ads compared to your organic results? Having that alignment across technical content, link building, all the different kind of key pillars of getting discovered and getting better rankings, as well as the alignment of your message, your brand values, all that kind of stuff. Like you said, I think that's kind of the golden ticket, right? That is the way to build your brand, to do this in the long term, to, for a better phrase, make money and, live and be able to hire employees and all this kind of stuff. That's that big picture stuff that I think a lot of us kind of get down into one or two metrics or one or two bits and pieces, or stuck focusing on a particular piece of data. You might spend an entire week looking at server logs and then forget, like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of other stuff I need to be worrying about as well. Maybe the client, in the classic case of you get a call from a client or from a business partner being like, yeah, but how much money did you make from these server logs? I'm like, okay, that's not quite how that works. But using the perfect example you made at the start of the show, Kaspar, like, there is a way of explaining that and justifying it. If you're thinking about selling the site or explaining how we've improved our discoverability, server logs can directly relate to that kind of stuff. And I think it's that connection. And I know Mark uses the term, like, building a conceptual model, right, of understanding how one piece of data relates to another and combining them into a overall understanding of what SEO means for this site, what SEO means as an industry, as we were saying earlier, and how you can do it in the right way, is kind of the nature of SEO, I feel. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Kaspar, please.
It is. And it touches on a very important point. It's a very interdisciplinary sport. It's an exercise which I like to compare it to a Formula One team, because in SEO you tend to have a multitude of people, if not multitude of teams. Individually, those teams may not even think of themselves as being contributors. Certainly not the PR and the marketing team. Initially, they probably do not believe that they have such a big impact on brand and on visibility and on SEO signals. The brand team, of course, part of the conversation. There will be the core people, developers, front and back end. There will be, of course, link builders and content people. They know they contribute to SEO most of the time, but it's a large group. One thing I did notice when working with particularly larger organizations, very international organizations, is that this tends to be a blessing and a curse in a way. A blessing because there is a lot of expertise inside the house. It can be a curse if there is no transparency, no sense of purpose, no sense of shared purpose. I am familiar with one case where ultimately the internal kind of tone derailed to the extent where there would be very passionate discussions followed by complete silence, as in nobody would talk to each other anymore. And in particular, the international teams, they wouldn't be really. They wouldn't seem to be working on a shared purpose and a shared objective, which led to very diverse signals. And it was the website's visibility downfall, of course. A case where the tone set within the company was a contributing factor to SEO, something I haven't seen otherwise. It is important to make sure that SEO is really run in a transparent way. Everybody understands what they're doing. And PR is the perfect example, right? I times and times again, we would experience cases where the PR team, especially when outsourcing PR activities, they would be building links. Now, nobody knows about it, and they're piling up over time. Those not necessarily the kind of links that Google tends to love in particular. And it can turn out to be a liability and a legacy issue that has to be dealt with eventually. It's important that there is, for that reason, it's important that there is one person who is kind of the linchpin, the leader, one director, SEO director, or marketing director, who is in charge mitigating the style, communication style, and making sure that everybody is aware that what they're doing matter and that what they're doing is actually impacting other teams' performance as well. So it's all comprehensive and pointing Google to a desirable direction rather than unintentionally creating signals which come to haunt us a year down the line, or maybe 10 years down the line.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that case where I mentioned the example of building one landing page for a PPC side of things and then a separate one for organic. Like, actually, a lot of the quality signals that you get for your Google ads are very similar to a lot of the organic stuff. You're still trying to serve that user intent, still trying to, like you said, exceed user expectations and things like that. And I think the same is absolutely true for building links. You can see plenty of content that is very clearly created just to build links. You are just manufacturing some correlation or causation of your data to make it sound interesting when it's not actually interesting, and then try and justify, oh, look, all of these publications mentioned our data. It's like, yeah, but I don't care the percentage of this type of fruit is, good to eat or not to eat or whatever. Like, there's so many examples where actually a good piece of content that is serving multiple different departments and way more collaborative than just, like you said, the link builders doing one thing while the organic team are crafting away at their blog posts or whatever it is. You can actually do both with one post and build. If you create good content, you can also gain links from that through outreach and naturally as well. There's no need to kind of completely separate each one. And like you said, you then realize, I didn't even realize you were building links to that page. We never even looked at that landing page. I didn't realize you were focusing on this product or this category or whatever it is. We've been focusing on this whole other thing. And neither then aligns with, as you're saying, like the director's objectives. Like, they're actually focusing on this product range. and you've been creating blog posts and optimizing product pages for one, and then building links to another, and they're actually focusing on a third, it's like, oh God, okay, right. Do we all need to get on a call and just have a conversation? Like this is crazy. And I'm sure plenty of viewers and listeners, you have experienced this. Kaspar, I know you and I have experienced this a few times in our career as well. Having that conversation can be so simple, but so difficult and so important in many ways.
Having that conversation tends to be initially a tense experience because obviously we are infringing on somebody's turf. And that tends to be often unwelcome. So it's important to, and this is part of your job and mine, I suppose, it's important to make everybody understand in a collaborative way that there is an impact beyond the impact that one considers the top priority. I'd like to touch on one thing that you did mention, because content creation is something that Google has been saying they favor, and content being king, that term has been around forever. I think there is a price to be paid for that strategy, and it was well intended and actually true when Google kept saying content is king. I think that phrase comes short, however, because what they should have been saying is quality, relevant content is king. Because content being king, even for those operators, for those market participants who want to play by the rules, they continued to create content over the years. And the best example is, you have that travel website that talks about the best pizza in New York. I mean, how is that relevant? I just want to go to New York. I'm interested in the flight and hotel. So you would have countless examples of the best pizza in New York recipes, without any so much as reference to the website selling either pizza or anything or offering reservations or anything like that. Completely off topic. What happened is that us as an industry, and as an unintended consequence of Google favoring that policy of content being king, us in the industry, we have contributed towards building vast volume of content, which is SEO content. And the quality of that content varies. And the price we all have to pay, including the users right now, is that content tends to be repetitive. Of course, it's being used by LLMs as well. So at times, to use the phrase that you used initially in our conversation, the low quality input results in rather low quality output. At times, and I would love to see some statistical data on that, at times it appears that because content has been democratized over the last, well, let's face it, 2 decades, so much, the quality of that content has considerably declined. And it happens to be really hard to find actual real quality content because it's being overshadowed with everything else out there, much of which is SEO content. I'd like to hope that Google would amend that policy at some point to say relevant quality content is something that will help you to do really, really well over a considerable period of time. As long as it remains just this blank, have more content and you'll be doing better, I don't think that's serving users. I don't think that is actually something that Google benefits from either.
Yeah, especially tying it all the way back around. We're talking about the indescribable amount of content that is created every single day, the amount of web pages that are created every single day, and how much of that is actually new, right? Like you're talking about quality, relevant stuff. I think fresh and unique perspectives is something Google has been talking about a lot more. I know information gain is a thing. Is again a whole other topic we could do an entire podcast about, but there is definitely that nature of, you're going to be fighting to get indexed against the millions of other pages that are also talking about basically the same thing as you, whether that's LLM generated or not. We are all human beings and we're all going to kind of go along similar kind of lines. And I think you're spot on. You need to be doing something that is clearly better than your competitors, that is clearly different and unique and brings a new element to it where it makes me want to click on it more than any other page that is talking about that thing. And the same is true, by the way, for podcasts, for YouTube videos, for TikToks, for Instagram posts, whatever it is. Why should I go to yours instead of anyone else's? If I can go to this brand or this site or this creator and get basically the same content, then I might just pick it, like flipping a coin and seeing what's happening. You know, like when I can find somebody who's like, oh, I've never heard that perspective before. This is kind of why I want to have these conversations with people like yourself, Kaspar, where we have a conversation. We go in a million different directions. We don't know exactly what we're going to talk about. We could come in with one idea of a particular topic, but then we've ended up talking about communication styles and also holistic approach to SEO. And then we're also talking about server logs half an hour ago. Like it's a unique capsule of a conversation that hopefully is by definition unique, because there is no other example of you and I having this conversation, right? And bringing our perspectives.
Unique selling proposition. One of the major takeaways from our conversation, something that is really at the foundation of any successful business, be that online or offline, you have to have something that makes people go there. If that's the bakery around the corner, it's the location, and maybe the bread is really good as well. It has to be something that makes users or clients want to give that business their money and spend time with that particular business. It can be an awful lot of things. Online, it frequently can be something as a combination of the brand, a combination of the shipping and return policy. And at times, it's something that pertains to the community around the business. That hasn't been very much on vogue lately, but I think it comes and goes in waves. Who knows, maybe there's something to come back. It's not something that's easily built. It's not something that can be achieved overnight. But then again, we're talking about legitimate businesses who are being built in order to grow and thrive. And that's something that, while it takes time, it's also sustainable. It's also something that doesn't break overnight, even though that the traffic, the organic traffic may be gone. You can still survive, you can still thrive, and you have to keep in mind in online business. This is something I'd like to also touch on, because many of our business partners really fret that moment when traffic is gone for whatever reason, and this tends to be a very stressful situation for them, something that they really lose their sleep over. And I keep saying, while it is a stressful situation, it is but a stepping stone towards new heights. It is often a situation that allows for changes to be introduced that were for a long time neglected and wouldn't be approved, because we want to keep a steady keel. We didn't want to rock the boat too much. Now that the boat has been properly rocked, now that the top level management says, do whatever you have to do, just undo the damage, get us back on track again. I keep saying, no, let us not just get back on track. Let's make sure that we go above and beyond, because there is no limit to the traffic that can be forthcoming from organic search. So it's not a case where we have to return and regain what we lost. No, we can actually aspire to get so much more visibility and a bigger share of the market.
Absolutely. I think that's a perfect inspirational moment to end on there, mate. I appreciate that. Ending with a bit of hope and inspiration and aspirations for us. Absolutely. Well, if the listeners and viewers do want to follow you, Kaspar, want to follow what you and Philly are doing over at Search Brothers, where is the best place to find you? And of course, I'll put links for everything in the show notes, of course, but where is the best place to find you?
Thank you very much. We do, of course, have our website, searchbrothers.com, but I'm rather really active on LinkedIn. Tend to share every now and then. Obviously, I will be sharing this episode. That goes without saying. And I will be talking at a handful of conferences. It's in a good year, it's about 10 conferences across Europe. So if you ever happen to see me on stage, either bring your questions to the conversation or approach me after the conference. I'm always happy to meet people face to face. It is a learning opportunity for me as well. So whether it's LinkedIn or a conference in Europe sometimes in 2025, I'll be very happy to engage with everybody that wants to talk about SEO or Google search.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and hopefully we will cross paths at a conference in the future. I'd love to have a conversation with you in person as well as on the podcast. And it sounds like we kind of set up about 3 or 4 more episodes to do down the line. So we had a couple of times we said, well, we could do a whole episode. Oh, we could do a whole episode about that. So I'm sure we will have another conversation on the podcast in the future as well.
That's me butting in on the next episode. I'll be absolutely happy to continue our conversation.
You're my new co-host now, mate. You're here every week.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Kaspar. Like I said, links to go and follow Kaspar. Check out Search Brothers and everything he's doing in SEO. Go and check him out in the video description and links below. Thank you for joining me, Kaspar. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Have a great day.
And that wraps up this week's episode of Search with Candour. Thank you so much for joining me, to Kaspar Szymanski. I think it was a lot of fun. Like I said, a really insightful conversation to get an idea of what Kaspar thinks are the important bits and pieces that should be going into your SEO tactics, your SEO strategies, and your plans for marketing for you and your businesses in the future, essentially. I know this has kind of become a running topic on the show. Very much last year, we were talking about escaping the silo and getting out of that head kind of space where SEO is on its own, right? You need to think about what your clients are doing with PPC, what your clients are doing from a brand perspective. What are the other things that are happening in the other channels? This year, I feel like we're talking a lot about the future. Obviously, we talk a lot about LLMs, we talk about AI, we're talking about AI overviews and all that kind of stuff, right? But I think predictions for the future and that kind of brand consistency and what that kind of means for a lot of the companies and clients we're using in our day-to-day business, I think that matters a lot these days, right? And I think when it comes to, it seems to be the kind of conversations that are coming up a lot on this podcast this year, and hopefully you're kind of getting an insight into that already. I know it's only March and we're coming up to April very, very soon. If you haven't already, by the way, like I said at the very beginning, the little sponsor here, go and check out the live podcast. If you're going to be in Brighton and attending Brighton SEO, you can come and see me, Sarah, and Tasman live. And we're going to be talking about personal branding because we think it's such a relevant topic. Again, I know I had this conversation with Mordy a couple of weeks ago. I know I even talked to Sam and Tori from Greydot a few weeks ago as well. Erica Varanguli last week. Like, everybody is talking about brand, everybody is talking about consistency, and it really seems to be the important topic a lot of us are talking about in the industry at the moment. Of course, I'll be back next week with Mark Williams-Cook back here in the Candour studio, well, the Candour studio over there, and we'll be talking about some interesting topics and SEO news, anything basically we've spotted on the on our processes for getting our core updates newsletter updated every single week, anything we've seen on LinkedIn, any spicy and hot topics in the SEO industry that we can pick about and argue about and debate and whatever we can find. So stay tuned next week when Mark Williams-Cook will be joining me. I've got some amazing guests coming up later on after that as well. Coming up, of course, you will hear the Live Brighton podcast. That will be on this podcast feed, on this YouTube channel, or if you're listening, it'll be on Spotify and Apple Podcasts in the usual podcast place. That will probably be a week or two after it's recorded on the 9th of April, so that'll be one of the episodes in April. I've also got a conversation with Grace Frolick, and we're going to be talking all about user journeys, mapping them, how to track them, why they're important, and basically getting into all the details of why you should be creating and tracking user journeys in 2025 and paying attention to that kind of thing. I've also got a returning guest, technically for a third time since I interviewed him in Brighton for an episode we did live from Brighton. Matt Coley is back on the show talking all about the next step in his journey. Previously, he talked about his journey leaving the agency he was working at and going freelance. Now he's talking about starting his own agency, what that process has been like, what his plans have been, how he's all bringing it all together essentially, and going from a one-man show to creating a marketing agency around him. It's a really interesting conversation with both Grace and Matt, and look forward to those throughout the rest of April, like I said, accompanied by my conversation with Mark and the live podcast as well. And we've got some awesome stuff coming up over the next few months as well. I'm pretty much recorded until the end of April through to May at this point, so you've got a lot of stuff to look forward to in the next few weeks as well. In the meantime, I would really hugely appreciate if you stuck around right until the end. If you could leave us a review on Spotify. Obviously, I hope it's 5 stars, but please be honest. Please give me feedback. You can react with emojis and do comments and stuff on Spotify now. They're making this whole platform a lot more interactive, so please do leave a comment down below if you're listening on Spotify. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you can leave us a review there. If you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe down below. I would hugely appreciate any interactions and any support you can give us. And yeah, get involved. If there are any guests you would like to see, any topics you'd like to see discussed, let me know in the comments, and I will try my very, very best to get anyone and everyone who I think we could have an interesting conversation with here on the podcast. Anyway, I'm rambling on, as I often do in these outros. If you stayed right until the very end, I appreciate you. You're one of the real ones. You've stuck with me right until the very end here. And yeah, on that note, I hope you have a lovely week, and I will see you next week, once again, with Mark Williams Cook.